Who is she? Roman Volkov's voice cut through the damp night air, like the cold click of a gun being cocked. He stood 3 steps away from the pile of garbage, his black cashmere coat soaked with drizzle, gray eyes cold as steel staring down at the body curled beneath a torn cardboard box. Dmitri didn't answer right away. He'd worked for Roman for 15 years, long enough to know when silence was the only safe response. The woman didn't move. Her body was folded in on itself, like it had forgotten how to uncurl. Hollow cheeks, cracked lips, dry and bleeding at the corners. A dark purple bruise bloomed beneath her left eye. Her hair, once styled, once cared for now, hung in greasy, matted ropes across her face. She blinked against the dim streetlight, eyes wide but empty, as if even recognizing a voice required too much. Roman took a step closer. I asked you a question. Dmitri cleared his throat. Serena Cole, Victor Crane's ward. Roman's jaw tightened. Victor Crane, the only man who had ever spared his father's life. The debt Roman had never repaid. He crouched down slowly. Serena, she flinched. Her whole body went rigid, trauma carved into every twitch, every glance over her shoulder. She tried to push herself up, but her arms shook violently, barely able to lift her own weight. And then, slowly, in silence, she lifted the hem of her shirt. Roman inhaled sharply. Scars. Dozens of them. Angry red burns seared across her ribcage. Faint purple welts coiled like ropes around her abdomen. Crisscrossing cuts from a blade, shallow, but deliberate. The bruises on her arms were fresh. Beneath them, older wounds healed wrong, ignored, forgotten. He didn't step back. His fists clenched at his sides. Not from horror, from rage. Behind him, Dmitri's voice was low. I watched her for 3 days before I called you. Needed to be sure. Roman said nothing. He was staring at the girl Victor Crane had once spoken of with pride. The girl who played piano like an angel. The girl who made lemon cake every Sunday and hummed old jazz songs in the kitchen. Now she was half a ghost. He removed his coat and stepped toward her. Serena, he said again. Softer. I'm not here to hurt you. Her eyes flickered to his face, uncertain. Her voice came out as a broken whisper. Don't take me back. They'll kill me. Roman's eyes darkened. Who? She swallowed hard. Her throat worked around the dryness like even breathing caused pain. All of them. Roman didn't blink. He draped his coat over her shoulders, careful not to startle her. It swallowed her frail frame whole. She looked down at her hands, dirt under every fingernail, and said nothing. But she didn't pull away. Dmitri opened the car door. The clinic is ready. Private entrance. Roman nodded, guiding Serena into the black Mercedes like she was made of glass. She didn't speak for the entire ride. The city passed by miles of neon lights, shuttered storefronts, crumbling churches. Her reflection in the window looked like someone else. Someone shattered. Roman's fingers drummed against his knee. His face was set like stone. His mind raced not with guilt, but with fury. What had they done to her? Vivian, Marcus, Isabel. Victor had trusted them. But the scars, the bruises, the hollow eyes. Serena Cole had been broken, beaten, discarded, but not forgotten. If Serena's story moved you, hit that like button and drop a comment. Let me know where you're watching from. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And if you haven't already, subscribe so you don't miss what satisfies next. The black Mercedes came to a stop in front of a weather-worn building on the edge of Brooklyn. No sign, no neon lights, only a heavy iron door and 2 men dressed in black standing guard. Dmitri got out first, said a few words to them, and then the door opened. Roman carried Serena inside, her body so light that he almost could not feel any weight at all. Inside was a private clinic, spotless, modern, the complete opposite of the building's crumbling exterior. This was where Roman's organization handled cases that demanded discretion. No records, no questions, only results. Dr. Elena Markov was already waiting, her face not changing in the slightest when she saw Serena's condition. She had worked for Roman long enough to no longer be shocked by anything. Roman laid Serena on the examination bed, stepped back 1 pace, and watched in silence as the doctor began to check her over. Serena did not resist. She lay there with her eyes fixed on the ceiling, as if her soul had left her body a long time ago. What Roman did not know, what no one witnessed, was what had happened to her only 12 hours earlier. That afternoon, Serena stood outside a convenience store in a Harlem neighborhood. She had not eaten for 3 days. Her stomach clenched with pain, but she was used to that feeling. She approached a middle-aged woman who was walking out with a bag of food, trying to keep her voice as steady as she could. "Excuse me," she said, her voice rough with thirst. "Could you give me a few dollars to buy some bread?" The woman looked her up and down, her face twisting as if she had just smelled something foul. "Go somewhere else," she hissed. "Addict, do not hang around here." Serena was not an addict. She had never touched drugs, but she had stopped explaining long ago. No one wanted to hear it. She kept walking, along streets that grew darker as the sun went down. She asked a few more people. Some ignored her. Some cursed at her. One man in a green pickup truck threw half a can of beer at her, laughing loudly when it struck her shoulder, the beer soaking into the only thin layer of clothing she had. Night fell. Serena found a quiet corner of an alley, sat down, and pulled her knees to her chest. She tried to close her eyes, tried to find a few minutes of rest, but footsteps echoed. 3 of them, young, maybe not yet 20, they came toward her, laughing, their eyes lighting up when they saw her. One yanked the torn, battered handbag from her. Another shoved her to the ground. She tried to fight back, but she was too weak, too hungry, too exhausted. A punch to the face, a kick to the stomach. Her head slammed against the brick wall behind her. Then darkness swallowed everything. That was where Dmitri found her. He had been watching her for 3 days on Roman's orders, after receiving a confidential tip about a woman wearing a Crane family ring wandering the streets of New York. Now, in the clinic, Dr. Markov finished her examination. She stepped outside to where Roman was waiting, his face cold as ice but his eyes boiling. "How is she?" he asked. Dr. Markov looked at her notes, her voice level, yet each word landed like a blade. Severe malnutrition, dehydration, mild infection in several wounds. The 4th and 5th ribs on the right show signs of old fractures, healed improperly. Cigarette burns on her arms and back. A cut on her abdomen, shallow but deliberate, leaving a permanent scar. Roman said nothing. His hand tightened into a fist, blue veins rising under the skin. Dr. Markov hesitated. "Mr. Volkov," she said, her voice lower. "These injuries span years. This is not an accident. This is systematic abuse." Roman's jaw locked. Before she was on the street, who did she belong to? Victor Crane's family. The name hit Roman like a bullet straight through the chest. Victor Crane, the only man who had ever spared his father's life. Roman sat alone in his office on the top floor of the building he owned in Manhattan. The room was submerged in darkness, lit only by the city's glow spilling in through a vast wall of glass. He did not turn on a light. He did not need to. Darkness was where his thoughts sharpened, where everything became clear. In front of him, on a desk of black oak, lay the photograph Dmitri had just handed him. Serena Cole, 10 years earlier, standing beside Victor Crane at a birthday party. A 17-year-old girl in a white dress, smiling brightly. Victor's hand rested on her shoulder, the old man's eyes heavy with pride. Roman studied the picture, then lifted his gaze to the window. The girl in the photograph and the woman lying in his clinic were 2 entirely different people. One was overflowing with life, the other was almost already dead. The door opened. Dmitri walked in, a folder in his hand. He did not need to be invited. After 15 years working together, those formalities had become meaningless. "I have preliminary information on the Crane family," Dmitri said, setting the folder on the desk. Victor Crane, 68, withdrew from all activity 5 years ago. He now lives in seclusion in a mansion outside Chicago. The eldest son is Marcus Crane, 40, managing most of the family's assets. His wife is Vivian Ashford, 38, the daughter of a powerful legal family. Victor's daughter is Isabel Crane, 34, living in the main estate with her family. Roman listened, but his mind drifted back 20 years. He was 16. His father, Alexei Volkov, was a Russian immigrant businessman, trying to build a life in New York, but he had crossed Victor Crane's territory by accident, at a time when Crane was one of the most powerful Mafia bosses in the Northeast. On a winter night, they came. 4 black cars parked in front of the house. Men in long coats stepped out, guns tucked against their bodies. Roman remembered, with painful clarity, the feel of his mother's hand clamped tight on his shoulder, the 2 of them standing in the corner of the living room, trembling. His father knelt on the floor, hands bound, his face bruised purple from the beating. Victor Crane walked in, tall and commanding, eyes sharp as blades. He looked down at Roman's father, then turned his gaze to Roman and his mother. The silence stretched on. Then Victor spoke, his voice low and cold. "I do not kill innocent people. You did not know what you were doing when you touched my territory. I accept that." He signaled his men to untie Roman's father. "But remember this," Victor continued, staring straight into Roman's father's eyes. "This is a debt, One day, your son will pay it back." Then they left. Not a single shot, not a single drop of blood. Only a debt hanging over the Volkov family like a blade suspended in the air. Roman's father died of heart disease 10 years later, never getting the chance to repay it. But Roman remembered. He remembered every detail. Victor Crane's eyes that night, the sound of his voice, and the promise he left behind. Now, 20 years later, Victor Crane's adopted daughter was lying in Roman's clinic, her body marked with scars, her spirit shattered. Someone inside the Crane family itself had done this to her. Roman rose and walked to the window, staring out at the city at night. Millions of lights flickered below, but he saw nothing except the image of Serena's scars. He pulled out his phone and dialed. When the call was answered, he spoke briefly. "Gather everyone. 30 minutes. The wine cellar." Then he hung up and turned to Dmitri. "I want to know everything about the Crane family. Finances, real estate, connections, daily routines. Who comes, who goes, who meets whom. Follow them 24/7. Do not miss a single thing." Dmitri nodded. Then he asked, his voice low, "What is the plan, boss?" Roman turned back from the window, his eyes darkening like a sky before a storm. "Victor Crane saved my father's life. I never repaid that debt." He paused, jaw clenched hard. "Now his daughter is dying in my clinic. Someone did this to her, and whoever they are." His eyes were ice cold. "They have just made themselves my enemy." 3 days passed. Serena lay motionless on the hospital bed, given fluids, fed through a tube, tended by strangers whose names she did not know. She sank into a fevered, heavy sleep, sometimes whispering names no one understood, sometimes crying without waking. Then, on the morning of the 4th day, she opened her eyes. The harsh white light made her squint. The smell of disinfectant rushed into her nose. The steady beep of machines tapped at her ears. Serena did not know where she was. She knew only one thing. She had to run. Her heart fluttered out of rhythm. Her breathing came fast and broken. She tried to sit up, but her body would not obey. Weak as if the bones had been hollowed out of her, she rolled to the edge of the bed, her feet touching the cold floor, trying to stand, but her knees buckled. She fell, yanking the IV line with her, and the saline bottle crashed to the floor with a sharp clatter. The door flew open. A woman in a white coat hurried in, worry on her face. She said something in English, her voice gentle, trying to soothe, but Serena did not hear her. She saw only the woman's hand reaching out, moving toward her, and Serena screamed, "Do not touch me." Her voice went high and panicked, like an animal cornered with nowhere left to go. She curled into herself, her back pressed to the wall, both hands over her head, her whole body shaking. "Do not touch me, do not touch me, do not." The nurse stopped and backed away, hands lifted as if in surrender. She turned her head toward the door, as if waiting for someone. And then Serena saw him. A man stood in the doorway, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a black suit without a tie. His hair was dark brown, slightly wavy, and his eyes were gray, the color of a sky before a storm. His face was cold, rigid as if carved from stone, yet there was no threat in his gaze, only attention. Waiting. He did not come in. He did not take another step. He simply stood there, watching her from a safe distance, as if he understood that any sudden movement might shatter what was left of her. The nurse quietly left the room, closing the door behind her. Only 2 people remained. The silence stretched. Serena stared at him, chest heaving, her eyes still wild. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice rough. "What do you want from me?" "My name is Roman Volkov," he answered, calm, low, and even. "I found you 3 nights ago, dying in an alley." Serena swallowed. "I do not have money. I do not have anything. I do not want your money. I want the truth. The truth." Serena laughed, a bitter, empty sound. "The truth about what?" "About what happened to you. About the scars on your body. About why Victor Crane's adopted daughter is half dead in the trash." At the sound of that name, Serena went rigid, her eyes widened, fear braided with confusion. "You know my father. I owe him a debt," Roman said, "from a long time ago. And I never forget what I owe." Serena said nothing. She folded in on herself even more, as if trying to make herself invisible. She did not trust him. She did not trust anyone. Every time she trusted someone, she was betrayed, beaten, thrown out. Roman watched her for a long time. Then, slowly, he drew an old photograph from his jacket pocket and placed it on the small table beside the bed. He did not hand it to her. He did not force her to look. He only set it there, and then stepped back. Serena looked at the photograph. Her heart felt as if someone had closed a fist around it. In the picture was a girl of about 12, wearing a flowered dress, sitting beside a piano. Victor Crane stood next to her, his hand on her shoulder, smiling. Late afternoon sunlight spilled through a window, laying gold over them both. It was her, 15 years earlier, in the house she had once called family. Serena's breath caught in her throat, her eyes blurred with tears. "Where did you get this?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Victor Crane used to talk about you," Roman replied. "The girl who played the piano like an angel. The girl who baked lemon cake every Sunday and sang old jazz songs in the kitchen. He was very proud of you." Tears rolled down Serena's cheeks. She did not bother to wipe them away. "That girl is dead," she said, her voice breaking. Roman stepped closer, just one step. "Then tell me who killed her." Serena lifted her head and looked into his eyes. Gray, cool, and steady, but not judging, not pitying, only waiting, patient. She had kept silent for so many years. She had swallowed her tears, clenched her teeth, endured, saying nothing because no one wanted to hear it. But this man wanted to hear it. And for the first time in years, Serena began to tell her story. Serena sat on the hospital bed, her back against the pillows, her thin hands laced together in her lap. Roman sat in a chair a few steps away, close enough to hear her, far enough that she would not feel threatened. Dmitri stood in the corner of the room, silent, taking notes in a small notebook. Late afternoon sunlight slipped through a sheer curtain, laying faint bands of light across the floor. Serena drew a deep breath, and then she began to speak. 15 years earlier, she was 12, living at St. Mary's Orphanage on the outskirts of Chicago. She did not remember the faces of her birth parents, only that they had left her at the gate of a church when she was only a few months old. She grew up behind cold walls, among dozens of other children who had been abandoned the way she had. She learned how to be invisible, how not to draw attention, how not to expect anything. Then one day, Victor and Catherine Crane came. Catherine was the first woman who looked at her as if she were a human being, not a number in a file. She had softly waved brown hair, warm amber eyes, and a smile that made the whole room brighten. She sat down beside Serena and asked if she liked music. Serena nodded, shy. Catherine took her hand and said that at home she had a piano, and she would teach Serena to play if she wanted. A week later, Serena left the orphanage, sitting in the Crane family's luxury car, her heart pounding with fear and hope. Their home was larger than anything she had ever imagined. A 3-story mansion with a wide garden and a fountain in the front yard. But what overwhelmed her most was the piano in the living room. Black and gleaming, regal, so beautiful she did not dare touch it. Catherine taught her one note at a time. She was patient, gentle, never scolding Serena when she played wrong. She taught her how to cook, taught her how to make lemon cake from a family recipe, taught her that every Sunday was family day, when everyone sat together, ate cake, drank tea, and talked about the week that had passed. Victor was different. He was strict, quiet, his face always cold as ice, but he protected her in his own way. Once, when Serena was 14, a neighborhood boy taunted her, called her a picked-up orphan. Victor heard about it. He said nothing, only looked at the boy with a chill so hard the boy never dared come near the Crane house again. That night, Victor called Serena into his study. He said, his voice low and solid, "You are my daughter. If anyone lays a hand on you, I will cut off their hands." Serena cried. For the first time in her life, she felt she belonged somewhere. But not everyone in the family welcomed her. Marcus, Victor's biological son, almost 15 years older than she was, always looked at her with contempt. Isabel, Victor's daughter, was not openly hostile, but she was never friendly either. They treated Serena as if she were a decoration Catherine had brought home, something that would be thrown away when the novelty wore off. Then Marcus married Vivian Ashford. From the very first meeting, Serena could feel the danger coming off that woman. Vivian was beautiful, refined, born into a powerful family of attorneys. But her eyes were cold as a snake's, and when she looked at Serena, they were filled with disdain. Vivian did not hide her hatred. Once, when they were alone in the kitchen, Vivian leaned close to Serena and whispered, "You are just a servant renamed as an adopted daughter. Do not pretend you belong here." Catherine protected Serena. She was a shield between Serena and the hostility of the others. But 3 years earlier, she was diagnosed with late-stage cancer. 6 months later, she died. Serena still remembered the last night at Catherine's bedside. Catherine held Victor's hand, her voice weak but urgent. "Protect the girl. Do not let them hurt the girl," Victor promised. But after Catherine was gone, He collapsed. He locked himself in his room, saw no one, spoke to no one. He withdrew from everything, including protecting Serena. And Vivian seized the chance. Serena stopped, her voice catching. She looked down at her hands, her thin fingers trembling. Roman watched her, his face unreadable, but his eyes darkened. After Catherine died, he asked, his voice low. What happened? Serena lifted her head, her eyes rimmed with red, but no tears left. She had cried too much already. Now there was only emptiness. After Catherine died, she said, they moved me down to the basement. Vivian said I no longer deserved to live upstairs. She paused, drawing a shaky breath. That was when the real nightmare began. Roman leaned forward, his gray eyes sharp and cold. Tell me everything. The basement was cold and dark. There was only a weak ceiling bulb, an iron bed with a thin mattress, and a bucket in the corner. That was all Serena had for the next 2 years. Vivian did not waste time. On the very first night, Serena was moved down. That woman came to the basement, stood in front of her with a smile as cold as ice. From now on, Vivian said, you will learn your true place in this house. Catherine is dead. No one protects you anymore. The days turned into weeks, the weeks into months. Serena woke at 5 in the morning, cleaning the entire house before the others stirred. She cooked, washed, ironed, did everything the servants used to do. But she was not paid, not allowed to rest, not allowed to eat at the family table. Vivian fed her whatever was left over, sometimes only a few scraps of stale bread and plain water. There were days she was given nothing at all because Vivian said her work was not good enough. But hunger was not the worst part. Vivian beat her. Not all the time. Only when no one could see. Only when Serena made a mistake, even the smallest one. A smudge on a glass. A crease in a tablecloth. An answer delayed by half a second. Vivian used her hands, a clothes hanger, anything within reach. She struck where clothing could hide it. Her back, her stomach, her thighs, so no one would see the damage. Serena remembered one night when she was washing dishes and accidentally broke a crystal glass. Vivian heard the sound, walked into the kitchen, her face going pale with fury. She did not say a word. She only pulled the half-smoked cigarette from her lips, stepped close to Serena, and pressed it straight into her arm. Serena bit down until her mouth bled so she would not scream. She knew that if she screamed, Vivian would do something worse. She stood there, tears streaming, breathing in the stench of burning flesh. While Vivian smiled in satisfaction. Next time, be more careful, Vivian said, and then she walked away. Marcus knew. Serena was certain he knew. Sometimes he saw the bruises on her wrists as she cleared the dinner table, but he said nothing. He turned his face away, pretending not to see, and when he was drunk, which happened more and more often, he beat her too. For no reason, only because he was angry at life, at his father, at anything at all, and Serena was the easiest place to pour his rage. Isabel did not use her hands. She only humiliated Serena, threw objects at her when she was displeased, forced her to work from morning until night like a slave. She called Serena a freeloader. Trash. Something that should never have been born. Once, when Serena accidentally wrinkled Isabel's favorite dress while ironing it, Isabel slapped Serena down to the floor, then made her kneel and beg for forgiveness for 2 hours. To survive, Serena kept a journal. She found an old notebook in a pile of discarded things and a pen with almost no ink left. Every night, after everyone was asleep, she wrote. She wrote about what had happened during the day. She wrote letters to Catherine, telling her how much she missed her, how she wished she were still alive. She wrote letters to herself, reminding herself that she still existed, that she was not the trash they said she was. That was the only way I kept my mind, she told Roman, her voice a whisper, writing letters to myself, to Catherine, to anyone who could listen. She hid the journal beneath a loose floorboard in the basement, where no one ever thought to search. Roman asked, his voice low. And Victor, did he not know anything? Serena shook her head and laughed, bitter. Victor lived at a vacation estate, more than an hour's drive away. He only came to visit once every few months, and every time he came, Vivian had advance notice. They hid Serena, or if they could not, they covered the injuries with makeup, made her wear long-sleeved clothes, and warned her that if she said anything, the consequences would be terrible. There was one time Serena tried to tell Victor. He came to visit at Christmas, and she thought it was the only chance she would ever get. She waited until he was alone in his study, then stepped in, ready to tell him everything. But Vivian was watching her. She appeared right behind Serena, smiled at Victor, and said Serena only wanted to wish him a Merry Christmas. Then she led Serena out, That night, Vivian beat Serena until she passed out. She said, "If you ever open your mouth again, I will make sure you disappear forever, and no one will ever find your body." And I believed her, Serena said, looking at Roman with empty eyes. I knew she could do it. Roman's hand tightened into a fist on the arm of the chair, blue veins rising beneath his skin. "Why did you not run?" Serena laughed, bitter, hollow. "Run where? I had no money, no papers. Vivian kept everything. My passport, my identification, my birth certificate. She made sure I could not exist without them." Serena lifted her head and looked straight into Roman's eyes. "I have been in prison for a long time. The basement was only the cell. 6 months earlier, Vivian decided it was time to end the game. She had tormented Serena for 2 years, but it was no longer enough. She wanted to push Serena out of that house for good, and she needed a perfect excuse to do it without anyone suspecting. She found that excuse in Victor's safe. Catherine's diamond jewelry set, a necklace, a pair of earrings, and a bracelet, with a total value of nearly $2 million. It was the wedding gift Victor had given his wife, and after Catherine died, it was kept like a sacred keepsake. Vivian knew the safe code because Marcus had let it slip by accident when he was drunk. One night, when the whole house was asleep, she took the jewelry set out, wrapped it in a silk scarf, and then slipped down into the basement. Serena was sleeping, worn out after a day of work. Vivian placed the scarf beneath Serena's bed, where it would be easy to find but would look as if it had been hidden. Then she waited. A week later, Victor came to visit. It was the perfect occasion. Vivian waited until dinner, when the entire family sat around the table, and then she began her performance. She pretended to be worried, said that lately some items in the house had gone missing, that she did not want to suspect anyone but she could not help noticing. Victor frowned and asked what had been taken. Vivian hesitated, said she did not dare say it because she was afraid it would hurt him. Marcus sat still, saying nothing, but his eyes dropped to his plate, avoiding everyone's gaze. Isabel looked curious, tilting her head as she waited. Victor demanded that Vivian speak plainly. She drew a deep breath, then said Catherine's jewelry set had disappeared from the safe. Victor's face went pale. He stood up and hurried to his study, opened the safe. Empty. When he came back to the dining room, his eyes were red with rage and grief. "That was my wife's keepsake," he roared. "Who did this?" Vivian stepped forward, put her hand on Victor's shoulder, her voice gentle but heavy with implication. "I think I know who, but I do not want to believe it. I tried to ignore it, tried to give her a chance." "Her?" Victor asked, eyes narrowing. Vivian turned her head toward the staircase that led down to the basement. Victor understood. He went down, with Vivian behind him. Marcus and Isabel stood on the stairs, watching like an audience at a play that had already been staged. Serena was on her knees scrubbing the floor when the basement door opened. She looked up and saw Victor standing there, his face cold as ice. Behind him was Vivian, her serpent eyes gleaming. Serena knew something terrible was about to happen. Victor did not say a word. He walked to Serena's bed, bent down, and searched. His hand touched the silk scarf. He pulled it out, opened it, and the diamond jewelry glittered under the weak yellow light. Victor's face crumpled. "Serena," he said, his voice thick. "What is this?" Serena's heart felt as if someone had squeezed it shut. "I did not take it. Dad, please. I would never do that." She crawled to Victor's feet, tears pouring. Vivian stepped forward, her eyes red too, tears rolling down her cheeks. The false tears she had practiced in the mirror hundreds of times. "I tried to protect her, Victor. I truly tried, but she has been stealing for months. I did not want to believe it." Serena screamed. "She is lying. She put it here. I did not take anything." But Victor did not look at her. He stood there, holding the diamond bracelet, the one his wife had worn on their wedding day, the one he thought would be kept forever. And it was found beneath the bed of the adopted daughter he had sheltered for 15 years. "I gave you everything," Victor said, his voice cold as ice. "And this is how you repay my family." "Dad," Serena sobbed, "please believe me." But Victor turned away. He did not look at her again. He went up the stairs, his back bowed under the weight of betrayal he believed was real. Right then, another man appeared. Nathaniel Ashford, Vivian's brother, a well-known attorney among the elite. He walked in, his face flat as money, carrying a leather briefcase. "I have prepared the paperwork," he said. "Theft of property worth more than $1 million is a serious felony. She could go to prison for 10 to 20 years. Serena trembled. She looked around, searching for anyone who might stand with her. Marcus stood on the stairs, his eyes avoiding hers. Isabel folded her arms across her chest, smiling with satisfaction. No one would help her. Then Vivian spoke, her voice full of false compassion. "Victor," she said, "perhaps we should not make this bigger than it needs to be. She is not worth bringing scandal on the family. Let her go." Victor stood still for a long moment. Then he nodded, exhausted. "Throw her out. I do not want to see her face again." An hour later, Serena stood at the front door, holding a small suitcase with a few old clothes inside. Vivian handed her $500 and smiled. "Consider it farewell money. Do not come back." The door slammed shut behind her. Rain poured down in sheets. Serena stood on the driveway, clutching her suitcase, looking back at the house she had called family for 15 years. In a second-floor window, Vivian stood there, looking down at her, a bright smile on her lips, and Serena understood. This had been the plan from the beginning. Everything had been calculated by Vivian. She had waited for this chance for 2 years, and at last, she had won. $500. That was all Serena had when she stepped out through the gates of the Crane estate on that rainy night. She walked to the nearest bus stop, sat waiting for 2 hours in the cold, then boarded the first bus into the city. She found a cheap motel on the outskirts of Chicago, the kind people pay for by the night and nobody asks for papers. The room was tiny, filthy, reeking of damp and old cigarettes, but at least it had a bed and a door that could be locked. She thought she would stay there for a few days, find a job, then rent a small apartment and start her life over. She was wrong. No one hires a person with no identification. Serena went to one restaurant after another, one shop after another, one coffee place after another, begging for any work at all, washing dishes, mopping floors, anything. But the answer was always the same. Do you have an ID? Do you have a social security number? Do you have a work permit? She had nothing. Vivian had kept it all. Passport, identification card, birth certificate. Everything that proved she existed in this world was in that woman's hands. Serena could not open a bank account, could not rent a place officially, could not do anything an ordinary citizen could do. She was like a ghost, alive but unrecognized. The money dwindled. $30 a night for the motel, $10 a day for food, and she ate very little. After 2 weeks, the $500 was gone. She began to sell what she had. Her only coat, $20. Her shoes, still in good shape, $15. The small watch Catherine gave her when she was 16, $50. Each time she sold something, she felt as if a piece of herself was being torn away, but she had no choice. In the end, she had only one thing left, Catherine's ring, a simple silver ring with a small blue stone. Not worth much money, but Catherine had worn it her whole life and passed it to Serena before she died. Serena had kept it hidden in her coat pocket through the 2 years she was imprisoned in the basement, never letting anyone know. And now, even starving to the point of dizziness, even cold to the point she could not feel her toes, she would not sell it. "I would rather starve than sell it," Serena told Roman, her voice rough. "It is the only proof I ever had a mother." She left Chicago after a month, not for any specific reason, only because she could not stay in the city where the Crane family lived. She climbed onto a long-distance bus, spending her last bills, and headed east, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia. Every city was the same, the looks of contempt, doors slammed shut, nights spent on a park bench until security chased her away. In the end, she reached New York, the city of dreams. But for her, it was only a massive maze of dark alleys and indifferent faces. She slept anywhere she could, under bridges, in corners of alleys, in front of abandoned buildings. She begged for food, sometimes given a few dollars, sometimes spat on. She was beaten, robbed, driven off like a stray dog. Once, she found a large piece of cardboard and thought she could use it as a place to lie down for the night. A group of other homeless people came, took it from her, kicked her into a gutter. She lay there, staring up at the pitch-black sky, and wondered why she was still trying to live. Maybe death would be easier. Maybe she should let go. But every time she thought that, she touched the ring in her pocket, and she remembered Catherine. She remembered how Catherine taught her that life was precious, that no matter how hard it became, there was always hope. So she kept living, kept breathing, kept walking on feet that no longer felt like her own. Until that night, until the group of young men attacked her in the alley, until she passed out and thought it was over. And then, Serena said, her voice dropping to a whisper, "You found me." Silence filled the room. Roman did not move. Dmitri had stopped taking notes a long time ago, his pen hovering above the page. Serena looked at Roman and waited for him to say she was lying. waited for him to throw her out like everyone else. But Roman rose. He walked to the window and looked out at the city at night. His voice was cold as ice. I have heard enough. Serena shrank back. You do not believe me. Roman turned around. His eyes flared with something she did not recognize. Not pity, not doubt. It was rage. I believe every word you have said. And now. He looked at Dmitri, his jaw clenched tight. We hunt. The wine cellar lay deep underground, beneath an Italian restaurant Roman owned in Brooklyn. No one knew this place existed except those he trusted completely. 6 men sat around a long oak table, yellow light throwing shadows across faces that were cold, hardened, carved by years. This was Roman's closest inner circle. The men who had followed him from the earliest days, the men who would die for him without asking why. Roman stood at the head of the table, both hands braced on the wood, his eyes moving from one face to the next. We have 4 targets, he said, his voice low and clear. Vivian Ashford, Marcus Crane's wife, Marcus Crane, Victor's eldest son, Isabel Crane, Victor's daughter, and Nathaniel Ashford, Vivian's brother, a lawyer. I want to know everything about them, where they go, who they meet, what they spend money on. I want to know what they eat for breakfast, and who they sleep with. Do not miss a single thing. He assigned specific tasks to each man. 2 would shadow Vivian and Marcus. 2 others would follow Isabel and Nathaniel. The 5th would dig into the Crane family's financial records. The 6th would reach out through underworld connections to see if anyone knew anything about unusual dealings. The meeting ended. One by one, the men left, dissolving into the night like ghosts. Only Dmitri remained. 3 days later, Dmitri brought the first information. The Crane family is in serious financial trouble, he reported, setting a thick stack of documents on Roman's desk. Marcus spends money like water, yachts, cars, casinos. He lost around $500,000 gambling over the past year. Vivian is addicted to shopping, designer handbags, jewelry, clothes. She has spent more than $300,000 on shopping alone in the past 6 months. And Victor? Roman asked. Victor has completely withdrawn, Dmitri answered. He handed control of the assets to Marcus 2 years ago, and Marcus is burning it down. They sold 2 properties in the past year to pay debt, but it still is not enough. Roman nodded, thinking. Anything else? Dmitri hesitated. There is something interesting. I know someone in the underground jewelry world. He says someone sold a very expensive diamond set about 3 months ago. The description matches Catherine Crane's jewelry. Roman's eyes flashed. Take me to him. Mikhail's jewelry shop sat in a narrow alley in Brighton Beach, the heart of Brooklyn's Russian community. From the outside, it looked like an ordinary pawn shop. But in the back was where Mikhail handled deals that sunlight never got to see. Roman and Dmitri walked in. 2 soldiers followed and took position at the door. Mikhail was a middle-aged man, obese, bald, with shifty eyes like a rat's. When he saw Roman, his face drained of color. Mr. Volkov, he stammered, forcing a smile. How can I help you? Roman did not answer. He pulled out a chair and sat across from Mikhail, both hands resting on the table. The diamond jewelry, he said, as calmly as if he were talking about the weather. Catherine Crane. Who sold it to you? Mikhail blinked. I do not know anyone named Crane. I do not know what jewelry you mean. Roman watched him for a long moment. Then he gave a small nod. The 2 soldiers behind Mikhail stepped in, grabbed him, and pressed him down onto the table. His face was forced against the cold glass surface, his eyes rolling with terror. Roman drew a switchblade knife from inside his coat and set it on the table right in front of Mikhail, turning it slowly. The steel glinted under the light. I will ask again, Roman said, his voice still calm, still flat. The diamond jewelry. Catherine Crane's collection. Who sold it to you? Mikhail's eyes locked on the blade. All right, he screamed, his voice shaking. A woman, blonde hair. She came 3 months ago. Roman signaled the soldiers to let him go. Mikhail sat up, rubbing his neck, gasping for air. I need proof, Roman said. Mikhail nodded again and again, lunged for the safe in the corner, opened it, and rummaged frantically. He pulled out a sheet of paper and a USB drive. The receipt, he said, handing the paper to Roman. She signed when she sold it. And this is a copy from the shop's security camera. Roman looked at the receipt. The signature was jagged but unmistakable. Vivian Ashford. He plugged the USB drive into the laptop Dmitri had brought. The video appeared, the image slightly blurred but clear enough to recognize. Vivian stood at the counter, the diamond jewelry glittering in her hands. She smiled and said something to Mikhail, then signed the receipt. Roman smiled. a cold smile that did not reach his eyes. Now we are making progress. He slipped the receipt into his pocket, then looked at Mikhail. What else do you know about the Crane family? Mikhail hesitated, licked his lips. There is one more thing. That woman did not come alone. She came with a man, a lawyer. They talked when they thought I could not hear them. Roman tilted his head. What did they say? They talked about getting rid of someone. An old man. Someone who was in the way. Roman went very still. Victor. Mikhail nodded, his face ashen. They are planning something very big. That night, at 3 a.m, 4 dark shapes moved through the wide garden of the Crane estate like ghosts. Dmitri had confirmed earlier that the family was vacationing in Aspen, leaving only 2 aging guards and a housekeeper asleep in the detached quarters. Roman did not take part in the break-in himself. He sat in a car parked 2 blocks away, watching through a small screen linked to the camera on Dmitri's chest. His team were professionals, former special forces, former agents, men who could enter and leave any building without leaving a trace. They disabled the security system within 90 seconds. The back door opened without a sound. The 4 men split up, each in a different direction, searching for evidence according to the list Roman had prepared. Dmitri went straight down to the basement. He had heard Serena describe the place she used to live, and he wanted to see it with his own eyes. The stairs leading down were narrow and dark, the air damp and heavy with mildew. When the flashlight swept across the room, Dmitri stopped. The room was as small as a box, gray concrete walls, no windows, a rusted iron bed with a mattress so thin it was almost nothing. A weak ceiling bulb dangled from above, a plastic bucket in the corner, nothing else. This is where she lived for 2 years, Dmitri whispered into the microphone, his voice catching. Like a dog. No, worse than a dog. He began to search, checking every corner, every crack, and then he noticed it, a floorboard near the foot of the bed slightly looser than the others. He knelt, used a knife to pry gently. The board popped up. Beneath it was a small hollow, just large enough to hide something, and inside was a notebook, thick, with an old leather cover, its pages turned yellow with age. Dmitri picked it up and flipped through a few pages. The handwriting was tiny, crowded, hundreds of pages. I found something, he said into the microphone. Her journal. 20 minutes later, the team withdrew safely, leaving no sign they had ever been there. The Mercedes slipped out of the neighborhood without a sound, swallowed by darkness. Roman sat in the back seat, the journal in his hands. He switched on the small reading light and opened to the first page, and he began to read. March 15th. Vivian locked me in the closet again. 8 hours. I counted every second. I did not cry. I will not give them that. June 3rd. Marcus hit me today. He was drunk. He said I remind him of everything he hates about his father. I do not understand. I have never done anything to him. September 20th. Sometimes I pretend Catherine is still alive. I talk to her at night. I tell her I am fine. I am lying. November 7th. Today is my birthday. 26. No one remembers. No one cares. I sang happy birthday to myself in the dark. My voice broke halfway through. December 23rd. Christmas. I hear laughter from upstairs. Music. Glasses clinking. They are throwing a party. I am down here in the dark, hungry and cold. Catherine, I miss you. I miss you so much. Roman read page after page. Every line felt like a cut. Every sentence like a scream held back. She had written down everything. Every beating. Every insult. Every night she was left without food. Every second of loneliness and despair. The journal was evidence. An accusation. A cry for help no one had heard. Until now. Roman closed the journal. His grip tightened until his knuckles went white. His eyes were bloodshot, not from tears. He did not cry. He did not know how to cry. It was rage. Rage held in, waiting to be released. Dmitri glanced at him through the rearview mirror. Boss. Roman did not look at him. His voice was only a whisper now, but each word was heavy as lead. They tortured her for 2 years. Burned her, cut her, locked her in the dark. And Victor did not know. He stared out the window, jaw clenched hard. Now he will know, and after that, we will finish them. A week passed. Roman kept gathering evidence, building a file on each member of the Crane family. Serena's journal was stored carefully in his safe, beside the receipt from the jeweler and the security camera recordings. Everything was slowly snapping into place, like pieces of a dark puzzle. Then one night, Dmitri stepped into Roman's office with a puzzled look. I received a message, he said, handing Roman the phone. Anonymous. Sent through an encrypted app. Roman looked at the screen. A short line of text. I know what you are looking for. Meet me. Alone. This could be a trap, Dmitri said. Roman nodded slowly. It could, but it could also be an opportunity. He thought for a moment, then decided. Reply to them. Matryoshka, restaurant, midnight, and prepare for every possibility. Matryoshka was one of Roman's legitimate businesses, an upscale Russian restaurant on the Upper East Side. By day, it served wealthy businessmen and politicians who wanted top-shelf vodka and caviar. By night, after closing, it became Roman's private territory, where he held meetings that daylight was never meant to see. At exactly midnight, Roman sat alone at a table in the corner, his back to the wall, his eyes on the door. A glass of vodka sat untouched in front of him. Two of his soldiers hid in the darkness at opposite corners, hands ready on their gun grips. Dmitri stood behind the bar, pretending to polish glasses, but truly watching every movement. The restaurant door opened. A woman stepped inside. She wore a black wool coat, brown hair tied neatly at the back of her neck, her face half covered by a silk scarf. But Roman recognized her at once. That walk, the way she held her head, those cool brown eyes. Isabel Crane, Marcus's sister, one of the people who had tormented Serena for 2 years. In the shadows, the two soldiers shifted their hands toward their weapons. Roman lifted a hand, signaling them to stop. He wanted to hear what she had come to say. Isabel walked to the table and stopped across from Roman. She did not sit, as if ready to run at any moment. They looked at each other in silence. Roman spoke first, his voice cold as ice. You have 10 seconds to explain why I should not kill you right here. Isabel swallowed, but she did not step back. She pulled out the chair and sat down, placing both hands on the table so Roman could see she carried no weapon. Because I did not come here to protect Vivian, she said, her voice trembling slightly but forcing itself steady. I came here to destroy her. Roman's expression did not change. Why should I believe you? Because I know what she is planning, and it is worse than what she did to Serena. Speak. Isabel drew a deep breath. Vivian and Nathaniel, her brother, are planning to declare my father legally incompetent. They have hired a doctor, prepared forged documents. Once Victor is declared incapable, they will take control of all his assets. Roman listened, his face still carved from stone. Anything else? Isabel looked him in the eye. And if that plan does not work, they will kill him. A heavy silence fell over the room. Roman did not move, but in his mind everything was rearranging into a complete picture. The conversation Mikhail had overheard in the jewelry shop, getting rid of someone, an old man, someone in the way. Now he understood. Why are you here? He asked. You are part of them. You watched them torture Serena, and you said nothing. Why would you betray them now? Isabel lowered her head, her shoulders shaking. Because Vivian threatened me. She said either you stand with me, or you are next. I know she was not joking. I saw what she did to Serena. I know what she can do to me. She lifted her head, her eyes red. I am not a good person, Mr. Volkov. I know that. I am a coward. I watched them torture Serena, and I stayed silent because I was afraid. I was afraid of Vivian, afraid of losing my place in the family, afraid of everything. But now that fear has come back to threaten me, and I do not want to die. I do not want to end like Serena, thrown into the street like trash. So I chose to betray before being betrayed. Roman watched her, measuring every detail, the frightened eyes, the trembling hands, the broken cadence of her voice. She was not lying. She was here out of fear, out of survival instinct, not conscience. But that did not matter. Motive did not matter. Only outcomes mattered. Will you testify? He asked. Against your sister-in-law, against your brother. Isabel nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. I have no other choice. Vivian is a monster, and I have been her accomplice for too long. Her voice caught. This is the only way I can live with myself. Roman leaned back and studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Then welcome to the right side, Isabel. Now tell me everything. After the meeting with Isabel, Roman had everything he needed. Evidence, a witness, and a plan, slowly taking shape inside his mind. But before he moved, he needed one more person on his side. Victor Crane. Victor's retreat sat outside Chicago, on the shore of Lake Michigan, far from the city's noise. It was where he had withdrawn after Catherine died, where he tried to outrun grief by locking himself inside solitude. Roman drove there alone in the late afternoon, as the sun lowered behind the trees and stained the water a fierce red-orange. He carried a leather briefcase packed with the things that would shatter Victor Crane's world. The guard at the gate recognized the name Roman Volkov and called inside. A few minutes later, the iron gates swung open. Roman drove up the gravel path and stopped before a 2-story mansion built in a classic style. Victor was sitting on the porch, staring out across the lake. He looked much older than the photographs Roman had seen, hair gone white, shoulders bent, a face carved deep with the wrinkles of age and sorrow. The eyes that had once been sharp as blades were now dull, tired. When Roman climbed the steps, Victor lifted his head. Surprise flickered across his face, then quickly settled into curiosity. "Roman Volkov, the son of the man I spared," Victor said, his voice rough, yet still carrying a trace of the authority of a man who once ruled an underworld empire. "You have done well for yourself. I hear you are the boss of the entire Northeast now." Roman nodded, wasting no time. "I came to repay the debt, Victor, but first, you need to see this." He set the leather briefcase on the table and opened it. Inside lay Serena's journal, a folder of photographs, a USB drive, and a small voice recorder. Victor frowned, looking at the items in confusion. "What is this?" Roman did not answer. He took out the journal and placed it in Victor's hands. "Read it." Victor opened the notebook and began to read. At first he skimmed, not understanding what he was looking at. Then, little by little, as he recognized the familiar handwriting, as he grasped what those lines were saying, his face began to change. His hands started to shake, his eyes widened, his lips moved, but no sound came. March 15th. Vivian locked me in the closet again. 8 hours. June 3rd. Marcus hit me today. September 20th. Sometimes I pretend Catherine is still alive. I talk to her at night. I tell her I am fine. I am lying. Victor read page after page, each line like a knife driven straight through his chest. Tears began to slide down his wrinkled cheeks, but he did not stop. He read until he could not read any more, until the words blurred before his eyes. "No," he whispered, his voice breaking. "It can't be. My girl." Roman opened the photo folder and set it in front of Victor. Pictures of the scars on Serena's body, burns, cuts, bruises. Each image was proof that could not be denied, proof of the cruelty she had endured. Then he played the video from the jewelry shop camera. Victor watched Vivian on the screen, selling Catherine's jewelry, smiling as if nothing were wrong. Finally, Roman turned on the recorder. Isabel's voice filled the air, telling everything: the abuse, the staged accusation, the plan to seize the assets, and the plan to kill Victor if necessary. "They tortured her for 2 years, Victor," Roman said, his voice cold but tightly controlled. "In your own house, under your roof. Then they framed her and threw her into the street like trash." Victor's face collapsed completely. He cried, not the quiet kind, but the sobbing of a man who felt he had lost everything. "I believed them," he choked out. "I believed Vivian. I threw her out. With my own hands." His voice caught. "Where is she? Where is my daughter?" "Safe. With me." Victor lifted his head, his eyes full of desperation. "Take me to her. Please. I need to see her. I need to. Not yet." Roman's voice hardened. "First we end this. And I need your help." Victor wiped at his tears. And then something changed in his eyes. An old fire, the fire that had made him a legend decades ago, flared back to life. "What do I need to do?" Roman smiled, a cold smile. "I need you to invite your family to dinner. One final reunion dinner." Victor understood. A trap. They would walk into it themselves, and once they were inside, they would never walk out again. 3 days before the dinner, Roman began preparing as if he were planning a military operation. He summoned his entire inner circle to the wine cellar, spread the blueprint of the Crane estate across the table, and assigned detailed tasks to each man. 2 would plant hidden cameras throughout the house. In the living room, the dining room, the hallways, even the corners no one ever thought to check. Another would make sure the audio system worked flawlessly, capturing every conversation with the clearest possible quality. Dmitri was given the task of contacting his friends in the police force, the men who had taken Roman's money for years and were ready to do whatever he demanded. They would wait outside the estate on the night of the dinner, ready to move the moment Roman gave the signal. Isabel was given a crucial job. She would steer Vivian into speaking the truth while the cameras rolled, bringing up sensitive topics, asking leading questions, pushing Vivian until she confessed, in her own words, to what she had done. Roman coached Isabel carefully, how each question should be asked, how each response should be met. Isabel listened and nodded, her face tight with fear and determination. She knew this was her only chance to step out of Vivian's shadow, and she would not miss it. After the meeting ended, Roman drove to the clinic where Serena was recovering. She looked much better than she had when he found her. A hint of color back in her cheeks, more light in her eyes, though bruises still lingered on her arms, not fully healed. She was sitting by the window, staring outside, when Roman walked in. "You do not have to do this," Roman said, stopping a few steps away. "You can stay here. I will handle everything." Serena turned and shook her head. "No, I need to be there. I need them to see me standing straight. Not broken. Not begging. Standing." Roman watched her for a long moment, weighing the resolve in her eyes. Then he nodded. "You are stronger than you think." The night before the dinner, everything was ready. The cameras were in place, the audio system tested, the police notified. Isabel had memorized her script. Dmitri sat in a car parked about 50 meters from the Crane estate, watching every movement through infrared binoculars. Everything was quiet. Everything looked normal. Until Vivian appeared. She stepped out the front door wearing a fur coat, a lit cigarette in her hand. She walked through the garden, eyes scanning as if searching for something. Dmitri held his breath, tracking her every step through the binoculars. Vivian stopped at the corner of the yard, staring toward the gate. Then she pulled out her phone and called someone. "Nathaniel." Her voice cut through the night silence, loud enough for Dmitri to catch through the bug they had planted. "Something is wrong. Someone is watching." Nathaniel's voice on the other end sounded tired. "You are paranoid. Victor invited us to dinner. It is just a family dinner." Vivian did not believe him. She hung up, her eyes still sweeping the darkness. Then she saw Dmitri's car. She narrowed her eyes, trying to make out more in the dark. Then she started walking toward it. Dmitri's heart hammered. He slowly lowered his hand, touching the grip of the gun at his side. In his earpiece, Roman's voice came through, calm but commanding. "Do not move. Do not breathe." Vivian moved closer. 15 meters, 12, 10. She stopped, tilting her head, trying to see through the tinted glass. Dmitri did not dare breathe, his hand still on the weapon, ready for the worst. Then Vivian's phone rang. She looked at the screen and frowned. "It was Marcus," she answered, and Marcus's voice came through, urgent, asking where she was, saying he needed her back immediately because something important had to be discussed. Vivian looked at the car one more time, then turned away, walking quickly back toward the house. She got into her own car, started the engine, and drove off. Dmitri let out a slow breath, his body slick with cold sweat. "That was too close, boss," he said into the microphone. Roman's voice came through the earpiece, still calm, as if nothing had happened. "Tomorrow, it will not matter. Tomorrow, she will walk into the cage herself." The night passed slowly. No one slept. Roman sat in his office, staring out at the city at night, thinking through every possible outcome and how to handle each one. Dmitri checked the equipment one final time. Isabel lay in bed, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling, her heart racing with dread, and Serena stood at the clinic window, watching the sky shift from black to gray, then to a soft orange-pink as the sun began to rise. Roman came at dawn. He stepped into the room and stood beside her at the window. The two of them watched the sunrise in silence for a long time. "Are you ready?" Roman asked. Serena turned to him, and for the first time since he had found her in that dark alley, he saw fire in her eyes. Not fear, not despair, but the fire of resolve, of strength, of someone who had survived hell and was ready to face the demons that had tormented her. "I have been ready since 2 years ago." That evening, the Crane mansion blazed with light. Crystal chandeliers poured warm golden glow into the large dining room, where the table had been set to perfection with silver place settings and high-end crystal glasses. From the outside, it looked like an ordinary family reunion dinner, but inside, everything was a carefully staged performance. Vivian arrived first, wearing a vivid red dress, blonde hair curled into flawless waves, a pearl necklace at her throat. She walked in with the confidence of someone holding every card in the deck. Marcus followed, his face flushed from a few drinks before he arrived, his steps slightly unsteady. Nathaniel came last, in a gray suit, carrying a leather briefcase filled with the paperwork he had prepared for Victor to sign. None of them suspected a thing. Why would they? Victor was a weak old man, grieving, lonely. They had manipulated him for years. Tonight was simply the final step in their plan. Victor played his role perfectly. He sat at the head of the table, back bent, eyes dulled, hands trembling as he held his glass of wine. He spoke slowly, his voice frail, as if each word took great effort to push out. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I am glad to see the family together." Vivian smiled, sweet but so false it turned the stomach. "You look so tired, Victor. We are very worried about you." Nathaniel nodded, opened his briefcase, and pulled out a stack of documents. "Actually, Victor, that is why we wanted to talk to you tonight. We think you should sign some medical and financial power of attorney papers, just in case, you understand, so we can care for you and protect your assets if anything happens." Marcus said nothing. He only drank, eyes down on his plate. He knew the plan, he agreed with it, but he did not have the courage to take part directly. He was a coward, always had been. Victor looked at the papers, pretending to consider. "Perhaps you are right," he sighed. "I am not young anymore. I need someone to take care of me." Vivian's eyes lit up. Her smile widened, more smug, more satisfied. She thought she had won. She thought everything was unfolding exactly as planned. She was wrong. Victor set his wineglass down and rose slowly. He walked toward the door, as if he needed to fetch something. "I almost forgot," he said, his voice suddenly clearer, stronger. "I invited one more guest." Vivian frowned. "Who?" Victor turned back, and for the first time in years, he smiled. A real smile. Not the smile of a weak old man, the smile of an old wolf about to tear into its prey, someone you thought you would never see again. The dining room door opened. Roman Volkov walked in. He wore a black suit, his hair slicked back, his gray eyes cold as steel. He said nothing, only stood there, radiating an unmistakable menace. And behind him was Serena Cole. She was no longer the gaunt, ragged woman they had thrown into the street 6 months earlier. She was clean, hair brushed neatly, wearing a simple but elegant black dress, and most of all, she stood straight, head held high, eyes fixed forward. No fear, no begging. Vivian's face went white as paper. The wineglass slipped from her numb fingers, hit the floor, and shattered with a sharp crash. "You," she stammered, her voice shaking. "You were supposed to be dead. Dead." Serena stepped forward, her voice strangely calm. "Sorry to disappoint you." Marcus lurched to his feet, his chair slamming to the floor with a loud bang. "What the hell is this?" Roman closed the dining room door behind him, the small click echoing like a gun being cocked. "This is Judgment Day." Vivian snapped out of shock. She spun and lunged for the side door, but it opened, and 2 large men in black suits blocked the way. She turned back, panic rising, looking around like an animal driven into a corner. "Victor!" she screamed, shrill. "What are you doing? She is a thief, a liar. She stole Catherine's jewelry." Victor stood, and in that moment, he was no longer the weak old man they had seen for years. He was Victor Crane, the man who once made the entire underworld tremble. His voice was ice cold. "No, Vivian, you are the thief." He pulled a sheet of paper and a photograph from his jacket and set them on the table. The receipt from the jeweler, Vivian's signature, and a still image from the security camera, capturing the moment Vivian stood in the shop, selling Catherine's jewelry with a bright smile on her lips. "And now," Victor said, his eyes locked on Vivian's, "everyone is going to know." Roman walked to the large television mounted on the dining room wall, pulled a USB drive from his jacket pocket, and plugged it in. The screen lit up. He turned back to Vivian, his voice calm, as if he were presenting in a business meeting. "Let us start from the beginning." The first video played on the screen. Footage from a security camera in the Crane Mansion kitchen, shot from above, sharp down to the smallest detail. In the video, Vivian stood in front of Serena, her face flushed with fury. Then she lifted her hand and slapped Serena to the floor. Serena tried to get up, and Vivian kicked her in the stomach. Once, twice, 3 times. Serena curled on the kitchen floor, both arms wrapped around her abdomen, while Vivian stood over her, mouth open, shouting words you could not hear because the video had no sound. Vivian's face turned gray as she watched herself on the screen. She stammered, "That is fake." "She is manipulating you, Victor." Roman did not bother to answer. He switched to the next video. This time it was inside Mikhail's jewelry shop. Vivian stood at the counter, the diamond set glittering in her hands. She smiled and said something to Mikhail, then signed the receipt. The date and timestamp were unmistakable. Only 3 months after Serena had been thrown out, with the accusation that she had stolen this very jewelry. Then Roman picked up Serena's journal, opened it, and began to read aloud. His voice filled the dining room, which had gone silent as a grave. March 15th. Vivian locked me in the closet again. 8 hours. I counted every second. I did not cry. I will not give them that. June 3rd. Marcus hit me today. He was drunk. He said I remind him of everything he hates about his father. December 23rd. Christmas. I hear laughter upstairs. Music. Glasses clinking. They are throwing a party. I am down here in the dark, hungry and cold. Stop, Vivian shrieked, her voice high and raw. This is fabricated. She wrote it to frame us. She is a liar. Roman pulled out his phone and pressed play. Isabel's voice rang out in the room, clear and trembling. I saw everything. Vivian hit Serena almost every day. She starved her, locked her in the basement, pressed cigarettes into her skin. Marcus hit her too, whenever he was drunk. And me? I knew everything, and I did nothing. We framed Serena for stealing the jewelry to throw her out. And now Vivian and Nathaniel are planning to have my father declared legally incompetent to seize his assets. If that does not work, they will kill him. Everyone in the room turned to look at Isabel. She stood in the corner, her face pale, but she did not step back. Marcus lurched to his feet, his face white as a corpse. It was all Vivian, he shouted, panic in his voice. I did not know anything. She forced me. Vivian snapped around, her eyes blazing with rage. Coward, she screamed. You hit her too. You think I did not see. You think they do not know. Marcus froze, his mouth hanging open. His own wife had just destroyed him. Nathaniel said nothing. He only edged backward toward the back door, trying to slip away without anyone noticing. But the moment his hand touched the knob, 2 of Roman's men were already there. They grabbed him and slammed him to the floor with a heavy thud. Isabel stepped out from the corner and faced her family, her body shaking, but her voice firm. I am sorry, but I can't be part of this anymore. Vivian howled like a madwoman. Traitor, after everything I have done for you. Everything you have done. Isabel's voice broke. You turned me into a monster, just like you. Victor stood, old and weary, but in this moment he rose like a mountain. His voice shook, but it carried power, echoing through the room. Vivian, Marcus, you are not my family anymore. You tortured my daughter. You plotted to steal my inheritance. You were ready to kill me. He turned to Serena, his eyes filled with tears. She is the only family I have now. The front door opened. 2 police officers walked in. The friends Dimitri had contacted earlier. Vivian Ashford, Marcus Crane. Nathaniel Ashford, one of the officers said, his voice flat, like reading from a script. You are under arrest. Vivian screamed and fought as they cuffed her. This is not over. You will pay for this. Serena stepped forward, calm, cold, free. She stood in front of Vivian and looked straight into the eyes of the woman who had tormented her for 2 years. No, Vivian. You are the one who has paid. Vivian was led out of the dining room in handcuffs, still screaming like someone gone mad. Her glossy blonde hair was now a tangled mess, and the eyes that had once been cold as a snake's were bloodshot with rage and fear. She fought, twisting to break free from the grip of the 2 officers, but they held her tight like iron clamps. Marcus did not resist. He cried, tears and mucus running down his pale face. He dropped to his knees in front of Victor, hands clasped as if he were praying. Father, he begged, his voice thick. I am sorry. I did not know. She made me. Please forgive me. Victor stood there, looking down at his biological son, the one he had raised, shielded, given everything to. Then he turned his face away. Not a word, not a glance. Marcus was hauled to his feet, cuffed by the officers, and led out after Vivian. Nathaniel said nothing through the entire thing. He stood there, his face gray as a corpse, eyes fixed on some empty point in the distance. He was a lawyer. He understood better than anyone what was waiting for him. The career he had built his whole life, the reputation he had guarded piece by piece, all of it would dissolve into smoke. When the officers cuffed him, he did not fight. He only lowered his head and walked after them like a body with the soul stripped out. In the weeks that followed, the truth came out. All of it. The press covered the case as a scandal that rocked Chicago's upper class. The Crane family, once seen as one of the city's most powerful, became the center of public disgrace. Vivian was charged with a long list of crimes: physical abuse, unlawful confinement, conspiracy to seize assets, and conspiracy to commit murder. The evidence against her was too clear, too detailed, to leave her defense attorney much room to maneuver. The trial lasted 3 weeks and ended with a sentence of 25 years in prison. Marcus tried to save himself by testifying against his wife. He told everything, pinned it all on Vivian, painted himself as a victim who had been manipulated. But the evidence in Serena's journal and Isabel's testimony proved he had been an accomplice as well. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison for aiding and abetting, and for failing to report a crime. Nathaniel had his law license revoked immediately. The state bar opened an investigation into him and uncovered more financial fraud he had committed throughout his career. He faced separate prison time for those crimes. His career and reputation shattered beyond repair. Isabel was spared because she cooperated with investigators. She was not prosecuted, but Victor cut her out of the inheritance and barred her from the house. She left Chicago right after the trial, said to have gone to a small city on the West Coast, trying to start over from nothing. The night Vivian was taken from the Crane estate, a police car sat out front, red and blue lights flashing in the dark. Vivian was marched outside, hands cuffed behind her back, hair limp, her red dress wrinkled and torn. She saw Serena standing on the steps, and her eyes flared with hatred. "You think you have won," Vivian hissed, her voice poisonous as venom. "You are nothing. You will always be nothing." Serena looked at her for a long moment. Then she walked down the steps, slowly, unhurried. She stopped in front of Vivian, leaned in, and spoke softly into her ear. "You are right. I am nothing. You made sure of that. But nothing has a funny way of surviving, and I am still here. While you—" She glanced at the police car. "You are the one who is gone now." Vivian could not speak. She was shoved into the car. The door slammed shut. The engine turned over. The car rolled away, the red and blue lights flashing farther and farther, dimmer and dimmer, until they disappeared into the night. Serena stood on the driveway, watching until there was nothing left to see. She drew a deep breath. The night air was cold and clean, nothing like the damp, rotten air of the basement she had endured for 2 years. Behind her, Victor's voice came, gentle and shaking. "Serena." She turned. The old man stood in the doorway, tears streaming down his wrinkled face. "Can you forgive your father?" Serena looked at him, the man who had saved her from the orphanage, who had given her a home, and then thrown her away when she needed him most. She did not answer. Not yet. But for the first time, she did not walk away. 6 months passed. Serena lived in a small apartment in Manhattan, provided by Victor. The apartment was not large, only 1 bedroom, a living room, and a small balcony that looked out over the city. But it was hers. For the first time in her life, she had a place that truly belonged to her. She went to therapy twice a week, sitting in Dr. Morrison's quiet office, learning how to speak about what had happened, learning how to face the memories instead of burying them. The nightmares were still there, and sometimes she still woke in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, her heart racing. But they came less often, and she was learning to trust again, little by little, one person at a time. The scars on her body were still there. They would never disappear completely, but she did not hide them anymore. When she wore short sleeves outside, when the burns and cuts showed, she did not lower her head in shame. They were part of her, proof of what she had survived, and she would not let them define her as a victim anymore. One Sunday afternoon, the doorbell rang. Serena opened the door and found Victor standing there. He had aged a great deal in 6 months, hair gone completely white, his face carved deeper with the wrinkles of age and regret. But his eyes were brighter, no longer dull and exhausted the way they had been before. He held a box in his hands, and when he opened it, Serena recognized the familiar scent. Lemon cake, Catherine's recipe. "I made it myself," Victor said, his voice slightly trembling. "I know it is not as good as your mother's, but I wanted to try." Serena looked at the cake, then looked at him. She let him in, set the cake on the table, and poured 2 cups of tea. They sat facing each other in silence for a long time, neither of them knowing where to begin. Finally, Victor spoke. "I do not deserve your forgiveness." Serena looked at him, looked at the man who had saved her from the orphanage when she was 12, who had given her a family, then failed to protect her when she needed him most, and was now trying to make amends. "No, you do not deserve it." Victor's face fell, pain written into every line. "But I am not forgiving you for you," Serena continued, her voice calm but firm. "I am forgiving you for me, because I refuse to carry your guilt any longer. That burden is yours, not mine." Victor nodded, tears sliding down his cheeks. "I understand." "Do you really understand?" Serena asked. "Then prove it. Not with words, with actions." Victor offered to give her everything, all his assets, the mansion, the companies, the bank accounts, everything. But Serena refused. She did not need his wealth. She accepted only enough to carry out a plan she had held close for a long time. a plan that had taken shape in her mind during the long nights in the dark basement, when she promised herself that if she survived, she would do something that mattered. That afternoon, after Victor left, Roman came. Their relationship had changed. He was no longer her rescuer, and she was no longer his victim. They were allies, friends, equals. Roman sat in the chair Victor had just vacated and looked at Serena with quiet curiosity. "So what now?" he asked. "You have money. You have freedom. What will you do with it?" Serena smiled, a real smile, her first in years. "I am going to build something. A place for people like me. People who have no one. People who think they are invisible." Roman nodded. "If you need anything, you have done enough. More than enough." She paused and looked at him. "But thank you for believing me when no one else did." Roman's expression softened, only for a moment. Some debts are worth paying. He stood and walked toward the door, but before he stepped outside, he stopped and turned back to her. "What will you call it? The place you are building?" Serena looked out the window, at the city stretched below, at the future she was finally free to shape. "Catherine House, after the name of the only mother I ever had." 1 year later, an old mansion outside Chicago was brought back to life. The building had sat abandoned for years, but now it had been completely restored, painted a bright, clean white, with large windows that welcomed sunlight, and a lush green garden filled with flower beds in every color. At the gate, a brand new sign had been hung, gold lettering on a gentle blue background. "Catherine House, a safe place for survivors." The opening ceremony took place on a beautiful sunny autumn day. Dozens of people were there, donors in sharp suits, volunteers with radiant smiles, reporters with cameras and microphones, and most importantly, the women and children Catherine House had helped during its earlier pilot phase. Victor stood beside Serena, scissors in hand to cut the ribbon. He had grown older, his back more bowed, but his eyes shone with pride. This was how he atoned, not with empty words, but with real action. He had funded most of the construction costs and pledged to continue supporting Catherine House for many years to come. Roman stood farther back, blended into the crowd, not needing recognition. He did not need attention. He only needed to know his debt had been paid, and that the woman he had found in a dark alley years before now stood tall, shining like a lighthouse. After the ribbon was cut, Serena stepped up to the podium. She looked out at the crowd, drew a deep breath, and began to speak. 2 years ago, I slept in an alley. I had no name, no identity, no hope. I thought I was invisible. I thought no one would ever see me again. She paused, looking at each face in the crowd. But someone did see me. Someone found me in the dark and refused to leave me there. And today, I stand here, not as a victim, but as a survivor. Not as someone who was saved, but as someone ready to save others. Applause rolled through the garden. "Catherine House is not only a shelter," Serena continued, her voice ringing out with strength. "It is a promise that no one, not one woman, not one child, will ever have to be invisible again. Not while I am standing here. Not while this place exists." 2 years later, Catherine House had become a temporary home for more than 200 women and children who had been abused. Serena became a voice for those without a voice, appearing on interview programs, writing for magazines, receiving awards from human rights organizations. But none of that mattered as much as what she saw every day. Faces once filled with fear, now learning to smile. Children who once curled into corners now running and laughing. Women who once believed they had no worth finding their trust in life again. Late one night, when Catherine House had fallen asleep, Serena sat by the window in her office, looking out at the quiet garden under the moonlight. On the desk in front of her lay Catherine's ring, the small silver band with the blue stone she had guarded through her darkest years. Beside it was a letter she had just finished writing. "To Vivian," she wrote, "I forgive you. Not for you, not because you asked, but because I refused to carry your poison any longer. You wanted to destroy me. You almost did. But here is what you never understood. Broken things do not always stay in pieces. Sometimes they become something new, something stronger, something more beautiful. You are in prison. I am free, and I will never think about you again. Serena." She folded the letter, stood, and walked to the fireplace. The flames crackled, giving off a gentle heat. She placed the letter into the fire and watched it catch, curl, and turn to ash. She smiled. This was the final release. A soft knock sounded at the door. She turned and saw a little girl standing in the doorway, about 7 years old, wearing pink pajamas, a book held tight to her chest. It was Lily, one of the children living at Catherine House. the daughter of a mother who had escaped a violent husband. "Miss Serena," Lily said, her voice small and careful. "Will you read me a story?" Serena rose, walked to the doorway, knelt to the girl's level, and smiled. "Of course, sweetheart. What story would you like?" Lily lifted the book. The story about the little girl who found her home. Serena's eyes shone. That was her favorite story too. She took Lily's hand and led her down the hallway to the common room, where the other children were waiting. Outside the window, dawn was breaking. A new day. A new beginning. Serena Cole had been broken, beaten, thrown away, forgotten. But she was not destroyed, because there are survivors. Survivors who pass through fire and do not simply escape. They rise, and they light the way for others. Serena's story teaches us that no matter how far life pushes us into the darkest depths, no matter how we are hurt and betrayed by the very people we trusted, there is always hope. Forgiveness is not forgetting what happened. It is freeing yourself from the weight of the past. And true strength is not found in revenge, but in turning your pain into a flame that shines for others. If this story touched your heart, please press the like button and share this video with those who need to hear that survival is absolutely possible. Please subscribe to our channel so you do not miss the next moving stories. We would love to know how you feel about this story. Have you ever faced hard situations in life? Did Serena's story bring something up in you? Please leave a comment below. Share what you feel from the deepest part of your heart. We are always listening and we cherish every opinion. Finally, we wish all of you watching this video good health, a life filled with joy and peace each day. Thank you for walking with us. Goodbye, and see you in the next video.